The revolver pressed cold against the old man's temple, but he kept stirring his coffee. Slow circles. 3, 4, like he had all the time in the world. Son, he whispered, you picked the wrong table. The saloon in Redemption Creek went dead silent that October morning in 1883. Every man there knew Jake Hollister, the fastest draw south of the Platte River. 9 confirmed kills, maybe double that without witnesses. But nobody knew the white-bearded man sitting at the corner table, calmly sipping his coffee like it was just another sunrise. Jake had ridden into town at dawn, his duster coat thick with dust from 3 days hard riding. He was hunting someone. Word in the territory said that man might be hiding in Redemption Creek. When Jake pushed through those bat-wing doors, his hand already resting on his holster, he scanned every face in the room. Then he saw him, the old man. Something about those eyes, those weathered hands wrapped around that tin cup made Jake's blood run cold. You're him, Jake said, his voice sharp as winter wind. You're Samuel Cross. The old man took another slow sip of coffee. That name doesn't mean much these days, son. It means plenty to me, Jake replied, drawing his revolver in one fluid motion. He pressed the barrel hard against the old man's forehead, expecting fear, expecting begging. Instead, Samuel Cross looked up at him with tired gray eyes that had seen too much death to be afraid of one more. Will it take long? The old man asked quietly. My coffee's getting cold. Jake's finger trembled on the trigger. Something was wrong. No man faces death this calmly unless he's already made peace with it, or unless he knows something you don't. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this tale, hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Tell me what country you're listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the frontier. Now stay sharp. What's coming next will catch you off guard. The other men in the saloon pressed themselves against the walls. The bartender, a nervous man named Willis, slowly reached under the bar where he kept a scattergun, but thought better of it. This was between Jake Hollister and whoever this old man really was. You killed my brother, Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. 4 years ago in Silverdale. Shot him down in the street like a dog. Samuel Cross set his coffee cup down gently. I've killed many men, son. You'll need to be more specific. The answer infuriated Jake. His jaw clenched, and he pressed the gun harder against the old man's skull. Tom Hollister. He was 21 years old. You shot him 3 times, left him bleeding in the mud outside Porter's general store. Tom Hollister, Samuel repeated, searching his memory. His eyes showed recognition, then something that might have been regret. The boy who tried to rob the store. The one who shot Abel Porter first. He was defending himself, Jake snarled. From an unarmed clerk counting change. Samuel's voice carried no mockery. Just plain fact. Your brother fired first. Killed a man with a wife and 2 daughters under 5. I was the marshal. I did my duty. Jake's hand shook now. Rage and grief mixing into something dangerous. You didn't have to kill him. You could have wounded him, arrested him. He fired at me twice, Samuel said. Missed both times because his hand was shaking. But he wasn't going to stop. I've been doing this work for 30 years, boy. I know what a man means to die rather than surrender. The tension stretched like rope pulled taut. Outside, a horse whinnied. Someone's boots scraped against floorboards. Jake's finger remained on the trigger, but something in the old man's words had planted a seed of doubt. His brother Tom had always been reckless, always chasing easy money and big dreams. You're lying, Jake finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. Samuel Cross picked up his coffee cup again, taking another slow sip despite the gun still pressed against his forehead. The gesture was so casual, so utterly fearless, that several men in the saloon exchanged nervous glances. I don't lie about the men I've killed, Samuel said. Can't afford to. Each one stays with me, follows me like shadows. Your brother's face is one of 47 I see when I close my eyes at night. 47, Jake repeated, his voice hollow. 47 men, Samuel confirmed. Some deserved it. Some probably didn't. Most fell somewhere in between, like your brother. But every single one of them drew on me first or was shooting at someone else. I never murdered a man in my life, though I've killed plenty in the name of the law. Jake's gun hand wavered. He'd spent 4 years tracking this man. For years living with rage and the need for revenge. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, always seeing himself pull the trigger without hesitation. But the old man's calm was unsettling. His honesty even more so. "You're just going to sit there?" Jake asked. "You're not even going to fight back?" Samuel set his cup down again. "What will be the point? You've already decided I deserve to die. Maybe you're right. Maybe after 47 men, the debt has come due." He gestured at the coffee. "But I prefer to finish this first. It's good coffee. Willis here makes it strong, the way it should be." The bartender nodded nervously, saying nothing. Jake looked around the saloon. Every eye was on him. Some faces showed fear, others curiosity. A few showed something like pity. But pity for whom? For the old man about to die, or for the young gun who was about to become what he hated most? "Tell me about Tom," Jake said suddenly. "Tell me exactly what happened that day. No marshal's report. The truth." Samuel Cross studied the young man's face for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair, and Jake's gun followed the movement, still aimed, but with less pressure now. The old man's eyes went distant, traveling back 3 years. "It was July," Samuel began. "Hot morning, the kind where the sun comes up angry. I was making my rounds when I heard the shot from Porter's General. By the time I got there, your brother was backing out the door with a grain sack full of cash and supplies." Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "The clerk was on the floor," Samuel continued. "Man named Abel Porter, shot through the chest. His blood was spreading across those nice wood floors. Tom saw me and raised his pistol. Didn't say a word, just fired." Samuel reached up and touched his head as if feeling for a hole that was no longer there. "The first shot went through my hat. The second one caught my deputy, Charlie Webb, in the shoulder. Charlie was 20 paces behind me." "You're saying Tom shot a deputy?" Jake's voice cracked slightly. "He did. Charlie survived, but his arm never worked right again. Had to give up being a lawman. Took up work at the feed store." Samuel's eyes refocused on Jake. "Your brother was scared, boy. I could see it in his eyes. But scared doesn't make you innocent, and it doesn't make Abel Porter any less dead." The saloon remained perfectly still. A fly buzzed against the window, the only sound besides breathing and the creak of leather as men shifted their weight. After Charlie went down, Samuel said, "Tom fired at me again. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. He miscounted his rounds. Then he tried to run. I called out for him to stop, to surrender. He turned and tried to draw a second pistol from his belt." Samuel's voice dropped lower. "I didn't have a choice. I shot him 3 times because I couldn't risk him getting that second gun into play." Jake's face had gone pale. "That's not how they told it," Jake said, his voice barely audible. "The men who rode with Tom said you murdered him in cold blood. Said he was surrendering." Samuel's expression hardened slightly. "The men who rode with him weren't there. They'd scattered the moment they heard the gunfire. They left your brother to face the consequences alone, then fed you lies to ease their own guilt." "Dave Sutton saw it," Jake insisted. "He told me everything." "Dave Sutton was 3 blocks away holding the horses," Samuel replied. "I arrested him 2 days later. He testified against the others in exchange for a lighter sentence. He told the court exactly what I just told you. The judge's transcript is public record in Silverdale. You can read it yourself if you don't believe me." The gun in Jake's hand lowered slightly, no longer pressed against Samuel's forehead, but still aimed at his face. Jake's whole world was shifting. For years of certainty crumbling like dry clay. "Why didn't you come after me?" Jake asked. "You must have known I was hunting you." "I knew," Samuel said. "Heard about a year ago. A friend of mine up in Cheyenne sent word. Said Tom Hollister's younger brother was asking questions, practicing his draw, making threats." The old man reached for his coffee again, and this time, Jake didn't stop him. "But you're not a murderer, boy. You're angry and hurt, but you're not the kind to shoot a man in the back or ambush him at night. I figured you'd either find the truth eventually, or you'd face me straight on like you're doing now. You gambled your life on that." Jake asked, incredulous. Samuel smiled slightly, the first change in his weather expression. "Son, when you've lived as long as I have, done the things I've done, you learn to read men. I saw you the moment you walked through that door. I knew who you were and why you came. Jake slowly lowered his gun completely, letting it hang at his side. His hands still gripped the weapon, but the killing tension had drained from his shoulders. He pulled out the chair opposite Samuel and sat down heavily, like a man who'd been walking for days. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Jake said. Samuel gestured to Willis. "Bring another cup and a fresh pot." The bartender hurried to comply, grateful for something to do besides watch two men decide who would live and who would die. When the coffee arrived, Samuel poured for both of them. The simple domestic gesture seemed absurd after what had just transpired, but Jake accepted the cup anyway. The coffee was indeed strong, bitter, and hot. "Your brother wasn't a bad man," Samuel said after a moment. "He was young and foolish, riding with the wrong crowd. Dave Sutton and his gang, they prey on boys like Tom. Fill their heads with easy money and adventure. But robbery is robbery, and murder is murder." "Tom had dreams," Jake said softly. "He wanted to buy land, start a ranch. Said one big score would set him up." "They all say that," Samuel replied without malice. "One score, one job, one last ride. But easy money corrupts. It changes how a man thinks. Soon one score isn't enough, and the next job is easier than getting honest work. Your brother might have been a good man if he'd never met Dave Sutton." Jake stared into his coffee. "I've wasted 4 years." "Not wasted," Samuel corrected. "You learn to shoot, learn to track, learn patience. Those are valuable skills. The question now is what you do with them." Outside, the morning sun had climbed higher. The saloon's shadows shortened and dust motes danced in the light streaming through the windows. Life was continuing despite the drama at the corner table, the way it always does in frontier towns. "I could still kill you," Jake said, "but there was no heat in it." Samuel nodded slowly. "You could. I wouldn't stop you. Maybe I've got it coming. 47 men is a heavy load. Even if each one was justified, there's a difference between legal killing and righteous killing, and I've long since stopped being sure which side of that line I'm on." The admission surprised Jake. He'd expected many things from the man who killed his brother, but not this kind of weary honesty. "Why do you keep doing it?" Jake asked. "Being a marshal, if it weighs on you so heavy." Samuel was thoughtful for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "Because someone has to. These towns, they need law. Without it, men like Dave Sutton and his gang would run wild. Women wouldn't be safe walking to church. Children couldn't play in the streets. Every store would get robbed. Every disagreement would end in gunfire. There's other marshals," Jake countered. "Not enough of them. Not good ones, anyway." Samuel looked up, meeting Jake's eyes. "I'm good at this work. Don't say that with pride. Just stating fact. I'm fast. I'm fair. And I don't scare easy. Towns hire me when they've got trouble they can't handle. I clean it up and move on." "Sounds lonely," Jake observed. "It is." Samuel's voice carried decades of solitude. "I had a wife once. A son, too. Lost them both to cholera back in '68. After that, there didn't seem much point in settling down. The work became everything." Willis brought over a bottle of whiskey without being asked, set it on the table, and retreated. Samuel looked at it, but didn't pour. "Too early for that," he muttered. Jake found himself feeling something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. The man across from him wasn't a monster. He was just a man who'd made choices and lived with the consequences. Same as everyone else trying to survive in this hard country. "What was his name?" Jake asked suddenly. "The clerk Tom killed. You said Abel Porter. Tell me about him." Samuel seemed surprised by the question, but he answered. Abel was 34 years old. Came west from Ohio after the war. He'd been a shopkeeper there too, wanted a fresh start. His wife, Sarah, took in sewing to help make ends meet. Their 2 daughters, Emily and Rose. They'd be grown now. The youngest was only 4 when Abel died. The words hit Jake like physical blows. He'd spent 4 years thinking only of his own loss, his own pain. But Tom's bullet had created other orphans, other grief. "I never thought about them," Jake admitted. "The people Tom hurt. I only thought about losing my brother." "That's natural," Samuel said. "We all think our pain is the center of the world. Takes time and wisdom to see the bigger picture." He paused. "Sarah Porter still lives in Silverdale. She runs the general store now. Actually, first woman store owner in the territory, as far as I know. Strong woman. She didn't let tragedy destroy her. Jake felt shame burning in his chest. Does she know about me? That I was hunting you? I doubt it. I never told her. What will be the point? She's built a new life. No need to remind her of old sorrows. The two men sat together drinking their coffee. Around them, the saloon had begun to resume normal business. Men whispered to each other, casting glances at the corner table, but no longer frozen in anticipation of violence. I was ready to die here today, Samuel said. When I saw you walk in, I knew this might be the day. For years is long enough to run, even if I was just walking and you were doing the chasing. You weren't running, Jake said quietly. You were just living. Same things sometimes in this life. Samuel refilled both their cups. A young woman entered the saloon, which was unusual enough that several heads turned. She wore a simple calico dress and carried a basket covered with a cloth. She walked directly to Samuel's table, ignoring the stares. Mr. Cross, she said, I brought those biscuits I promised, fresh from the oven this morning. Samuel's weathered face softened into something approaching genuine warmth. Thank you, Clara. You didn't have to go to the trouble. No trouble at all. She set the basket on the table, then noticed Jake and the tension still lingering in the air. Am I interrupting? No, miss, Jake said quickly. We were just talking. Clara looked between the two men, noting the gun still in Jake's hand, the drawn faces, the barely touched coffee. She was young, maybe 20, but her eyes showed the kind of knowing that comes from living in hard places. I'll leave you gentlemen to your conversation, she said carefully. Then to Samuel. Will you be staying for supper? Mrs. Henderson is making pot roast. We'll see, Samuel replied. Thank you, Clara. After she left, Jake asked, Who's that? Reverend Henderson's daughter. I'm boarding at their place while I'm in town. Been here 3 weeks helping the sheriff with some trouble they've been having. Gang of rustlers working the ranches north of here. You're still working, Jake said. It wasn't a question. Until I can't anymore, Samuel confirmed. Though days like today make me wonder how much longer that'll be. The young guns keep getting faster, and I keep getting slower. Jake looked down at his own gun, then back at Samuel. I'm fast. Practiced every day for 4 years. I'm probably faster than you now. Probably, Samuel agreed without ego. Speed isn't everything, though. Being fast just means you die quick if you're wrong. Being smart means you don't have to draw at all. Is that why you didn't fight back today? Jake asked. Samuel shook his head slowly. I didn't fight back because I've killed enough men. If today was my day to answer for that, so be it. Besides, he looked directly at Jake. You're not a killer. Not yet. And I wasn't going to be the man who made you into one. Those words settled over Jake like a heavy coat. He finally holstered his pistol, the first time it had been put away since he'd drawn it 20 minutes ago. The gesture felt final, like closing a door on something. What happens now? Jake asked. Samuel pulled the cloth off Clara's basket, revealing warm biscuits. He offered one to Jake, who took it. Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. You've got skills, you're young, and you're smart enough to listen before shooting. That's rare out here. I'm not a lawman, Jake said. Don't have to be. Could be a rancher, a scout, a freight guard. Could even go back east, use what you've learned to protect businesses. There's always work for a man who can handle himself. Samuel bit into a biscuit, chewed thoughtfully. Or you could ride with me for a while. I could use someone watching my back, and you could learn the difference between revenge and justice. Jake stared at him. You're offering me a job after I nearly killed you? Nearly doesn't count, except in horseshoes, Samuel said with a slight smile. You had every reason to hate me, but you listened to the truth when you heard it. That shows character, and character is harder to find than fast hands. Outside, the town was waking up fully now. Wagons creaked past. Someone was hammering at the blacksmith shop. Children's voices carried on the morning air. Normal life in a frontier town, continuing regardless of personal dramas. I need to think, Jake said finally. Take your time. I'll be here till the rustler problem is solved. At least another week. Jake stood up, his legs unsteady. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was draining away, leaving him exhausted. I'm staying at the boarding house on Oak Street. If you need an answer before I decide. The one with the blue shutters, Samuel confirmed. Good people run that place. Tell Mrs. Morrison I sent you. She'll give you a fair rate. Jake nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Cross, thank you for not making me into a murderer today. Thank you for not making me kill another young man who reminds me too much of my own son. After Jake left, the saloon slowly returned to normal. Men resumed their conversations. Poker games restarted, and Willis began wiping down the bar with renewed vigor. Samuel sat alone, eating Clara's biscuits and drinking coffee that had long since gone cold. An older man approached the table, his badge identifying him as Sheriff Morton. He'd been sitting in the back corner during the entire confrontation, ready to intervene, but wise enough to let it play out. That was well handled, Morton said, pulling out the chair Jake had vacated. I thought for sure we'd be digging a grave or two this morning. So did I, Samuel admitted. The boy surprised me. Most men that angry don't want to hear the truth. What'll you do if he takes you up on the offer? Samuel considered the question. Teach him, I suppose. Train him proper. Make sure he uses those skills for something better than revenge. You getting soft in your old age, Sam? Getting tired. Maybe tired of putting young men in the ground. Tired of the killing. Samuel looked out the window at the peaceful street. Maybe it's time to build something instead of just tearing things down. Morton nodded slowly. The Rustler gang has been hitting the Thompson Ranch. They'll probably strike again tonight. Full moon makes it easier for them. How many? Samuel asked, his mind already shifting to the tactical problem. Best guess is 5 men. They hit fast, run the cattle through the canyon pass to a box canyon where they can rebrand them. Thompson has lost over 100 head in the past month. That's a substantial professional operation. Samuel finished his coffee. They have a scout watching the ranch? Likely. They seem to know when Thompson's hands are spread thin. Morton leaned forward. I could deputize you officially. Would give you legal standing if it comes to shooting. Do it. And Morton, if that Hollister boy is still in town tonight and wants to ride along, I could use him. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. You trust him? I trust that he's learned something today. Besides, 5 against 1 is bad odds, even for me. 5 against 2 is better. The afternoon passed slowly. Jake spent the hours walking the streets of Redemption Creek, thinking about his brother, about Samuel Cross, about the 4 years he'd spent consumed by hatred. By the time the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, he'd made his decision. As evening shadows lengthened across Redemption Creek, Jake stood in his boarding house room, staring at his reflection in the small mirror. The face looking back seemed different somehow. Older maybe, or just more aware. He'd come to Redemption Creek expecting to become a killer, expecting to find closure in murder. Instead, he'd found something more complicated. Truth. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Hollister, someone to see you. Jake opened the door to find Clara Henderson standing in the hallway, holding a folded piece of paper. Mr. Cross asked me to deliver this to you. Jake unfolded the paper. Samuel's handwriting was neat and precise. The Rustlers hit tonight. Full moon. If you want to learn the difference between revenge and justice, meet me at the sheriff's office at sundown. Bring your rifle. Clara waited, clearly curious but too polite to ask. Jake looked at her kind face and thought about the different paths available to him. He could leave town tonight, return to the empty vengeance that had consumed 4 years of his life. Or he could stay, learn something, maybe become something more than his anger. Tell Mr. Cross I'll be there, Jake said finally. Clara smiled. He'll be glad to hear it. He's a good man, you know. My father says Mr. Cross has saved more lives than he's taken, though most people only remember the taking. After she left, Jake checked his weapons. His Colt was clean and loaded, his Winchester rifle likewise. He'd maintained them religiously during his 4-year hunt, and the habit had become meditation. Now, he wondered if those same weapons might serve a different purpose. At sundown, Jake found Samuel and Sheriff Morton in the office, studying a hand-drawn map of the Thompson Ranch and surrounding territory. Samuel looked up as Jake entered, nodded once, and returned to the map. The canyon pass is here, Samuel explained, pointing. Only way to move that many cattle quickly. They'll come in from the east where there's cover from the tree line. Thompson's hands will be watching the main approaches, so the rustlers will hit from the blind side. How do you know their pattern? Jake asked. Because it's what I do, Samuel replied. Professional cattle thieves follow the terrain. They don't get caught by being unpredictable. They get caught by being seen. Morton added, we'll position ourselves in the rocks overlooking the pass. Let them push the cattle through, then cut off their escape. With luck, they'll surrender when they see they're trapped. And without luck? Jake asked. Samuel's expression hardened. Without luck, you'll learn why being fast matters. But remember, we're not here to kill them. We're here to stop them. Big difference. They rode out an hour later. 3 men on horseback, moving through the gathering darkness. The moon was rising full and bright, turning the landscape into something from a dream. Jake rode beside Samuel, and for the first time in 4 years, he felt like he was moving towards something instead of away from it. The Thompson Ranch appeared ahead, lights burning in the windows. They left their horses a half-mile from the canyon pass and proceeded on foot, moving carefully through the scrub brush and rocks. Samuel moved with surprising grace for his age, each step deliberate and soundless. Jake tried to match his movements, learning from the older man's example. They reached their position in the rocks just after full dark. Below them, the canyon pass stretched like a throat between 2 steep walls. Any cattle driven through would have to come single file through the narrowest section, making them easy to control, but also creating a natural bottleneck. Now we wait, Samuel whispered. Patience is most of this work. The exciting parts are short and ugly, but the waiting is what makes you or breaks you. They didn't have to wait long. Around midnight, Jake heard the soft lowing of cattle, then saw movement in the darkness. 5 riders emerged from the tree line, expertly moving about 40 head of cattle toward the pass. The operation was smooth and professional, confirming Samuel's assessment. Samuel touched Jake's shoulder and pointed. One rider was hanging back, watching their back trail. The leader and another man pushed the cattle forward while 2 more flanked the sides. Standard formation, hard to break. Morton signaled from his position across the pass. Everything was ready. Samuel cupped his hands around his mouth, and his voice rang out across the canyon. This is Marshal Samuel Cross. You're surrounded. Release the cattle and surrender your weapons. The reaction was instantaneous. The rear guard spun his horse and fired blindly towards Samuel's voice. The muzzle flash illuminated his face for a brief second, and Jake saw fear there and desperation. The cattle spooked, beginning to mill and bellow. Samuel didn't return fire. Instead, he called out again, "Don't make this worse. You can't escape. Throw down your guns." But the rustlers weren't listening. The leader shouted orders, and the 5 men spurred their horses, trying to burst through the canyon before they could be cut off. Everything happened fast then, just like Samuel had warned. The rustlers rode hard for the pass, firing wildly at the rocks. Morton fired a warning shot that ricocheted off stone with a sharp whine. One of the rustlers wheeled his horse and raised his rifle, aiming directly at Morton's position. Jake didn't think. He raised his Winchester and fired, just a hand's breadth to the left of the rustler, close enough that the man felt the bullet pass. The rustler's horse reared, throwing off his aim, and his shot went high. Samuel was moving now, emerging from cover with his hands steady on his Colt. "Last chance," he roared. "Next shot won't be a warning." Maybe it was the absolute certainty in his voice. Or maybe the rustlers realized they were truly trapped. The leader raised his hand slowly, and one by one, the others followed suit. The cattle continued milling in confusion, but the shooting was over. No one was dead. No one was even wounded. Sheriff Morton and his deputies emerged to secure the prisoners. Samuel approached the leader, an older man with a scarred face and defeated eyes. "Smart choice," Samuel said. "Trial and prison is better than bleeding out in a canyon." Later, as they rode back toward Redemption Creek, Samuel turned to Jake. "You had a clean shot at that man. Could have killed him easy. Why didn't you?" "Because you were right," Jake said. "We were here to stop them, not kill them. There's a difference." Samuel smiled, the first real smile Jake had seen on the old man's face. "That's the lesson most men never learn. You learned it in one day. That's something." The moon was setting as they reached town, painting everything in silver and shadow. Jake thought about his brother Tom, about the choices that led him to die in the mud outside a general store in Silverdale. Then he thought about the choice he'd made today and all the choices still ahead. Maybe 4 years wasn't wasted after all. Maybe it just took that long to find the right path. If you enjoyed this story of redemption and justice in the Old West, don't let it end here. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another tale from the frontier. We bring you authentic Western stories every week, crafted for listeners who appreciate the grit, honor, and moral complexity of the American frontier. Leave a comment below telling us what you thought of Samuel Cross and Jake Hollister's story. Would you have made the same choice Jake did? Have you ever had to choose between revenge and justice in your own life? Share this story with friends and family who love classic Westerns. Help us build a community of listeners who appreciate storytelling the way it used to be done, when characters had depth and every choice had consequences. And remember, the Old West wasn't just about fast guns and quick draws. It was about hard men making hard choices in a hard land, trying to find honor in a place where the line between right and wrong wasn't always clear. Until next time, keep your coffee hot, your conscience clear, and your stories close. We'll see you on the next trail. Ride safe, partners.